Good morning. We're here for chapter 23 of Odd Thomas. When we left Odd, he and Stormy had just been in the bowling alley, um, and Odd was noticing that they had all the employees in the place had new uniforms that matched the uniforms that people were wearing in the dream that he was having about, you know, people in a bowling alley being murdered. So that's kind of where we left it. Um, let's get going. Chapter 23. Stormy and I sat at a table in the bar alcove, but we didn't order drinks. I was already half drunk with fear. I wanted to get her out of the bowling alley. She didn't want to leave. We've got to deal with this situation, she insisted. The only way that I could deal with it was to phone Chief Wyatt Porter and tell him, with little explanation, that when Bob Robertson had his coming out party to celebrate his status as a full fledged murderous psychopath, the site of his debutante ball was likely to be Green Moon Lanes. For a man tired from a day of hard work, bloated with barbecue and beer and ready for bed, the chief responded with admirable quickness and clarity of mind. How late are they open? Phone to my right ear, finger in my left ear to block the alley noise. I said, I think until midnight, sir. A little more than 2 hours. I'll dispatch an officer right away. Have him stand security. Be on the lookout for Robertson. But, son, you said this might go down August 15th, tomorrow, not today. That's the date on the calendar page in his file. I'm not sure what it means. I won't be certain it couldn't happen today until today is over and he hasn't shot anyone. Any of these things you call Bodaks there? No, sir. But they could show up when he does. He hasn't returned home to Camp's End yet, the chief said, so he's out and about. How are the churros? Delicious, I told him. After the barbecue, we had a difficult choice between mud pie and homemade peach pie. I thought it through carefully and had some of both. If ever I had a glimpse of heaven, sir, it was a slice of Mrs. Porter's peach pie. I'd have married her for the peach pie alone, but fortunately she was smart and beautiful too. We said goodbye. I clipped the cell phone to my belt and told Stormy we needed to get out of here. She shook her head. Wait, if the blonde bartender isn't here, the shooting won't happen. She kept her voice low, leaning close to be heard over the clash and clatter of bowlers bowling. So somehow we get her to leave. No, a premonition in a dream isn't in every detail a picture of exactly what will happen. She could be home safe, and the shooter could show up here anyway. But at least she will have been saved, one less victim. Except that somebody else who wouldn't have died might be shot in her place, like the bartender who replaces her, or me, or you. Might be. Yeah, might be. But how can I save one if there's a likelihood that it means condemning another? 3 or 4 bowling balls slammed into pin setups in quick succession. The racket sounded a little like automatic gunfire, and though I knew it wasn't gunfire, I twitched anyway. I said, I've got no right to decide that someone else should die in her place. Prophetic dreams and the complex moral choices they present come to me only rarely. I'm grateful for that. Besides, I said, what's her reaction going to be if I walk over to the bar and tell her she's going to be shot to death if she doesn't get out of here? She'll think you're eccentric or dangerous, but she might go. She won't. She'll stay here. She won't want to jeopardize her job. She won't want to appear fearful because that makes her look weak. And these days, women don't want to seem weak any more than men do. Later, she might ask somebody to walk with her to her car, but that's all. Stormy stared at the blonde behind the bar while I surveyed the room for any bodaks that might precede the executioner. Nobody here but us humans. She's so pretty, so full of life, Stormy said, meaning the bartender. So much personality, such an infectious laugh. She seems more alive to you because you know she might be fated to die young. It just seems wrong to walk out and leave her here, Stormy said, without warning her, without giving her a chance. The best way to give her a chance, to give all the victims a chance, is to stop Robertson before he does anything. What's the likelihood you'll stop him? Better than if he'd never come into the grill this morning and I'd never gotten a look at him with his Bodak entourage. But you can't be sure you'll stop him. Nothing's for sure in this world. Searching my eyes, she thought about what I'd said and then reminded me. Except us. Except us. I pushed my chair away from the table. Let's go. Still staring at the blonde, Stormy said, "This is so hard." "I know. So unfair." "What death isn't?" She rose from her chair. "You won't let her die, will you, Audie?" "I'll do what I can." We went outside, hoping to be gone before the promised police officer arrived, and became curious about my involvement. No cops on the Pico Mundo force understood my relationship with Chief Porter. They sense that something's different about me, but they don't realize what I see, what I know. The chief covers well for me. Some think that I hang around Wyatt Porter because I'm a cop wannabe. They assume that I yearn for the glamour of the police life, but that I don't have quite the smarts or the guts to do the job. Most of them believe that I regard the chief as a father figure because my real father is such a hopeless piece of work. This view contains some truth. They are convinced that the chief took pity on me when at the age of 16 I could no longer live with either my father or my mother and found myself turned out into the world. Because Wyatt and Carla were never able to have children, people think that the chief has a fatherly affection for me and regards me as a surrogate son. I am deeply comforted by the fact that this seems to be true. Being cops, however, the members of the Pico Mundo PD sense instinctively that they lack some crucial knowledge to be able to fully understand our relationship. Likewise, although I appear uncomplicated and even simple, they regard me as a puzzle with more than one missing piece. When Stormy and I stepped out of Green Moon Lanes at 10 o'clock, an hour after nightfall, the temperature in Pico Mundo remained over 100 degrees. By midnight, the air might cool below triple digits. If Bob Robertson was intent on making hell on earth, we had the weather for it. Walking toward Terry Stambaugh's Mustang, still thinking about the death-marked blonde bartender, Stormy said, "Sometimes I don't know how you can live with all the things you see." "Attitude," I told her. "Attitude? How's that work?" "Better some days than others." She would have pressed me for a further explanation, but the patrol car arrived, pinning us in its headlights before we reached the Mustang. Certain that I would have been recognized, I waited hand in hand with Stormy for the cruiser to stop beside us. The responding officer, Simon Varner, had been on the force only 3 or 4 months, which was longer than Bern Eccles, who had regarded me with suspicion at the chief's barbecue, but not long enough for the sharp edges to have been worn off his curiosity about me. Officer Varner had a face as sweet as that of any host of a children's TV program, with heavy-lidded eyes like those of the late actor Robert Mitchum. He leaned toward the open window, his burly arm resting on the door, looking like the model for a sleepy bear in some Disney cartoon. "Odd. Pleasure seeing you. Miss Llewellyn? What should I be looking for here?" I was certain that the chief had not used my name when he had dispatched Officer Varner to the bowling center. When I was involved in a case, he made a point of keeping me as invisible as possible, never alluding to information acquired by preternatural means, the better not only to protect my secrets, but also to ensure that no defense attorney could easily spring a murderer by claiming that the entire case against his client had been built upon the word of a flaky, self-proclaimed psychic. On the other hand, because of my intrusion at the barbecue that resulted in the effort by the chief and Bern Eccles to put together a quick profile of Robertson, Eccles knew that I had some connection to the situation. If Eccles knew, then word would get around. It might already be on the police department grapevine. Still, it seemed best to play dumb. "What should you be looking for?" "Sir, I don't understand." "I see you. I figure you told the chief something that makes him send me out here." We were just watching some friends bowl," I said. "I'm no good at it myself." Stormy said, "He owns the gutter." From the car seat beside him, Varner produced a computer-printed blow-up of Bob Robertson's driver's license photograph. "You know this guy, right?" I said, "I've seen him twice today. I don't really know him." "You didn't tell the chief he might show up here?" "Not me. How would I know where he'd show up?" "Chief says if I see him coming, but I can't see both his hands, don't figure he's getting a breath mint from his pocket." I wouldn't second-guess the chief. A Lincoln Navigator pulled in from the street and paused behind Varner's cruiser. He stuck his arm all the way out of the window and waved the SUV around him. I could see 2 men in the Navigator. Neither was Robertson. "How do you know this guy?" Varner asked. "Before noon, he came in the grill for lunch." The lids lifted slightly from those sleepy bear eyes. "That's all? You cooked his lunch? I thought something went down between you and him." "Something. Not much." I compressed the day, leaving out what Varner didn't need to know. He was weird at the grill. The chief was there at the time, saw him being weird. So then this afternoon, I'm off work, out and about, minding my own business, and this Robertson flips me off, gets aggressive with me. Varner's heavy lids became hoods, narrowing his eyes to slits of suspicion. Instinct told him I was withholding information. He wasn't as slow as he looked. Aggressive how? Stormy saved me from a rough lie with a smooth one. The creep made a crude pass at me, and Odd told him to back off. Fungus Man didn't look like the kind of macho stud who thought every woman was panting for him. Stormy, however, is so strikingly good-looking that Varner, already in a suspicious mood, seemed inclined to believe that even a schlump like Bob Robertson would work up enough hormones to try his luck with her. He said, Chief thinks this guy vandalized St. Bart's. You know about that, I guess? Deflected this dogged Sherlock, Stormy said, Officer Varner, curiosity is killing me. Do you mind my asking, what's your tattoo mean? He wore a short-sleeved shirt, exposing his massive forearms. On his left arm, above his watch, there were 3 block letters, P.O.D. Miss Llewellyn, I'm sorry to say, as a teenager, I was one screwed-up puppy. Got myself involved in gangs. Turned my life around before it was too late. I thank the Lord Jesus for that. This tattoo was a gang thing. What do the letters stand for, she asked. He seemed embarrassed. It's a crude obscenity, miss. I'd rather not say. You could have it removed, she said. They've gotten a lot better at that in recent years. Varner said, Thought about doing just that, but I keep it to remind me how far off the right path I once went, and how easy it was to take that first wrong step. That's so fascinating and so admirable, she said, leaning closer to the window, as if to get a better look at his paragon of virtue. Lots of people rewrite their past rather than face up to it. I'm glad to know we've got men like you looking out for us. She poured this verbal syrup so smoothly that it sounded sincere. While Officer Varner was basking in her flattery as happily as a waffle in whipped butter, she turned to me and said, Odd, I've got to get home. I have an early morning. I wished Officer Varner good luck, and he made no attempt to continue grilling me. He seemed to have forgotten his suspicions. In the car, I said to her, I never realized you had such a talent for deceit. Oh, that's too serious a word for it. I just manipulated him a little bit. After we're married, I'm going to be on the lookout for that, I warned her as I started the car. What do you mean? In case you ever try to manipulate me a little. Good heavens, odd one. I manipulate you every day, and fold and spindle you as well. I couldn't tell if she was serious. You do? Gently, of course. Gently and with great affection. And you always like it. I do? You have numerous little tricks to get me to do it. I put the car in gear but kept my foot on the brake. You're saying I invite manipulation? Some days I think you thrive on it. I can't tell if you're serious. I know. You're adorable. Puppies are adorable. I'm not a puppy. You and puppies. Totally adorable. You are serious. Am I? I studied her. No, you're not. Aren't I? I sighed. I can see the dead, but I can't see through you. When we drove out of the parking lot, Officer Varner was parked near the front entrance to Green Moon Lanes. Instead of running a quiet surveillance of the place with the hope of nabbing Robertson before violence could be committed, he was making himself highly visible as a deterrent. This interpretation of his assignment was most likely not one the chief would have approved. As we passed him, Officer Varner waved at us. He appeared to be eating a donut. Granny Sugars always railed against negative thinking because she superstitiously believed that when we worry about being afflicted by one evil or another, we are in fact inviting in the very devil that we fear, and are assuring the occurrence of the event we dread. Nevertheless, I could not help but think how easily Bob Robertson might approach the cruiser from behind and shoot Simon Varner in the head while he noshed on his Krispy Kremes. All right, that was chapter 23. See you next time.